you guys playing?
Supposed to be playing Game of War, but this one player keeps kicking my...
The Legend 27?
Yeah, the Legend 27.
Who is the Legend 27?
Some say the Legend 27 is the...
Andrew Jackson.
Yeah,
Andrew Jackson.
Who is the...
Andrew Jackson.
Some say the...
Andrew Jackson.
is the first
Presidents of the United States.
born from...
Waxhaw Settlement, South Carolina.
I heard the Legend 27
is a very interesting person and I'd like to know more about him.
I thought you never asked.
Seatbelts, everyone! Please let this be a normal field trip. No way! We're going on a
spiritual journey.
I don't know what that means.
Enough is enough! I have had enough!
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live!
Andrew Jackson was
Born in the Carolinas at a town called Waxhaw. This was in March of 1767. His parents immigrated here just 2 years before his birth. Andrew Jackson was a Scottish and Irish. Jackson lived in a family of 2 brothers, him being the youngest, and a mother. His father died in an accident 2 weeks before Andrew appeared. Andrew was impatient and had a short temper. He often fought people, even in his adult life, for challenging him. Luckily for him, the American Revolution was just around the corner, and Andrew was excited to show those meanies who his friggin' boss, and to be a part of something big. And at age 13, Andrew Jackson and his living brother went into the war. Not only did the mother approve, she encouraged. She hated the British back in Ireland, especially her abusive, British father.
Get out! Hey you! Leave the jacket and get out! Get out! Give me the jacket! Give me the jacket!
defending a
House, the British surrounded the 2 boys, took them, and driven them off to a prison camp. They both got sick from one of the hundreds of diseases there were back then due to the nasty environment. They were both released, but it was too late. They both died. Except Andrew, who thought dying of disease was too mainstream. However, her mother didn't think so. Just weeks after his release, his mother, a nurse for the Patriot Army, caught cholera, a disease that makes you sick. She fell down, and could not get up. So his childhood kinda. It sucks! I always knew the french fries was evil, man. Selling all the trust no food that's not that good, man. I don't trust it, I just can't. When Jackson became older, he left Waxhaw just generally. It sucks! He went north to the town of Salisbury. There, he learned law and order. After that, he ventured west to Tennessee, not a state back then. When it did, he was a chosen candidate to the House of Representatives in 1796. He packed his bags to Washington to become a senator. He left the same year yet again. He was tired of being around
Bunch of old white people who are trying to be hip and cool.
So he went back to Tennessee to become a judge in the Superior Court of Tennessee for 6 years. In his free time, he worked on his farm with the help of his wife and his hundreds of slaves, and finally became a general of his state's militia in 1802, while also being the state's judge. Hey, that's pretty good. The beginning of the 19th century was not looking good for the young U.S. The Native American wanted the white man out of their hood, and the British, well, there being the British, tension was heating up and the War of 1812 occurred. But how did this all happen, you might be thinking?
Who cares? The
British kidnapped American sailors and forced them to work for Britain, especially merchants trading with France. Also, they gave weapons to hostile natives. Tecumseh, the leader of the Shawnee tribe, wanted to unite the native tribes to stop American expansion. When the War of 1812 started, Tecumseh led the Red Stick tribe to attack white settlements in the south, called the Creek War. Andrew, with the help of the Cherokee and other friendly tribes, helped crush the Red Sticks and cleared out the south of any more hostile natives. Then he turned to New Orleans, where it was rumored that the British sent 8,000 troops to take the city. Andrew went to New Orleans with 4,000 men. 300 British died and more than 1,000 British were injured or captured. 13 Americans died and 40 were injured. That was the last battle in the War of 1812, which ended 2 weeks ago. A couple years later, Andrew was faced with another challenge, Florida. Runaway slave and hostile Creeks from the war came and stayed there. President Monroe told Andrew to deal with these losers. But he also said not to attack Spain, the owners of Florida at the time. Don't attack Spain, Monroe said. Please. He didn't listen. He invaded Florida and took out the hostile Indians and captured Florida's capital. He also killed some British men to add some controversy. Spanish was triggered and told Andrew he was loser. But the government defended Jackson and gave reasons why Florida sucks. Spain gave the U.S. Florida for a small loan of $5 million. This was a surprise because when the U.S. asked to buy Florida before the invasion, their response was, no.
But after Andrew showed
Those compadres who was boss, the Spanish's response to selling Florida was,
and you can tell your friend.
After the Battle of New Orleans, Andrew was starting to get popular. In 1822, he thought about running for president and having a good chance of winning. After all, everyone thought Andrew was so Gucci swag. But unfortunately, the nomination for president didn't involve citizens yet. That vote came from mostly Congress and rich, white people. But still, Jackson had faith. He had to beat 3 men for the most electoral votes. In the right corner we have
Hey, what's up, guys? It's
William Crawford. On the left, Henry Clay. And the man that would be the most challenging for Andrew,
His name is John
Quincy Adams. When the votes were counted, Jackson won 99 electoral votes over Adams' 84. But he needed 131 votes to win. So the vote was taken to the House of Representatives to be resolved. The House had made their decision.
I'd like to announce the name of our new
President.
The obvious choice for the job. Please welcome our new
President John Quincy Adams.
Andrew was pretty mad at losing, as you can see. You see, when the House was going to vote, one of the candidates, Henry Clay, convinced his electors to vote John instead of Andrew. So Adams won and Clay was chosen to be vice president. Corruption. Andrew thought. He thought that this was an unfair election. He campaigned to stop this corruption. He ran in 1828, but this time under a new political party, the Democrats. This was also the year where citizens got to vote. Andrew won by a landslide, and when he hosted his inauguration, up to 1 million people came, not just the wealth, but the common people.
Under Jackson's rule, the country almost went into a civil war. It all started with tariffs. A tariff, a tax of importing and exporting goods between foreign countries, was deployed to protect industries from competition from British industries. That way, American industries would get more money because it would be cheaper to buy items made in the U.S. than in foreign countries. The farmers in the South were very triggered by this tariff on foreign lands. They got so mad, in fact, they exploded.
Praise Jesus. The South exported cotton to foreign nations. And with these new tariffs, it made it more expensive for foreign countries to buy American goods,
including cotton, so less cotton was being bought. They lowered the tariff in 1832, but the South was still angry, especially South Carolina, who nullified the tariff, pretty much meaning that state pretended like the law didn't exist. Andrew didn't like this. He passed a law that said if South Carolina nullifies, they die. And that was the end of the crisis.
Another important
thing Andrew did in office was enforce the Indian Removal Act, which is the most controversial thing done by Andrew Jackson. After the War of 1812, Jackson had no sympathy for the Native American and was afraid they might attack Americans again. Also, Southern farmers needed native land for their farming. So Andrew decided to tell the Native Americans to
Get out! Get out!
If they didn't comply, he would remove them from their land by force and throw them over to land west of the Young America's border. This land was separated by
a great
river, the Mississippi River. One of the most famous removals of Native Americans was the removal of the Cherokee, known as the Trail of Tears.
Live in a constant state of fear and misery.
Andrew Jackson is probably considered the most controversial president that ever existed. Of course there are exceptions. He was the first president who wasn't rich, didn't have proper education, etc. He was a commoner and cared the most about them. He destroyed the American Central Bank because he thought it only benefited the rich. He also liked to keep order in America. He got rid of the natives because he didn't trust them and wanted to stop the nullification of South Carolina with military forces. Many people hated him, however. Many people thought his Indian Removal Act was unconstitutional. Even the Supreme Court called it unconstitutional. He owned 300 slaves on his plantation. People also hated that he removed many Republicans in the office and gave their jobs to loyal Democrats, called the spoils system. Lastly, Andrew was a great military general who led the Battle of New Orleans, which boosted American patriotism. Andrew Jackson made a party that is still active today and also changed democracy for the better. Whether Andrew Jackson was a hero who changed democracy or a short-tempered bigot is a massive debate.
Garbage, okay?
This is
garbage, okay?